built on material things.
This world is built on material things. We ain't tripping off that. Money, gas, sausage, and everything. I want it all. Hello, everyone. I am William Jamal Wright.
And I'm Hattie.
And welcome to our podcast, HattieJo. What are we doing?
So, what are you doing?
So, for those of you that may not know, that was I Want It All by Warren G. and Mac 10. A little throwback classic for everyone. But this episode is actually about if you can have it all. And this actually came up. I was looking at, I was on Twitter one day, you know, the thing that...
As you do.
Yeah, just perusing through the timeline. And I actually saw this article. There's a women's basketball player, or a women's basketball coach, who's a head coach, and she is pregnant right now. And the caption for the tweet was that also had the article in it was like, "See, women can have it all," and it got me thinking. Like,
and did you read the article?
I did not read the article,
okay.
But like basically some of the comments were just that like she is a women's basketball coach, and a lot of times women are told that they cannot have like a professional career alongside while also having a family. And it just got me thinking, like, can you have it all? Like, because I feel like that's a conundrum. Like, you can't have, for me at least, I would say that you cannot have it all.
And I
think, like, having it all needs to be defined.
I was just going to say, can you please define in your opinion what it means to have it all? So, like, for instance, when you saw this tweet and you saw the headline, what was the implication to you?
To me, the implication was that, like, and just off this tweet alone, because when I say this, it's going to make, why don't men have to think about this? Because I already see this coming. Like, why, I can foreshadow, like, why don't men have to deal with this?
And why not?
and I often wonder, like, because I don't think men, well, first of all, when I saw this tweet, I thought, first, like, women, or in this particular instance, women want to, like, have a very successful career where they are, like, the person in charge, the person that everyone comes to, and, like, the person that has to hold everybody accountable. And that's, like, what the head coach is. Like, that, like, if something goes wrong, the head coach is the one that has to make the decisions.
Right.
If something goes wrong, everybody goes to the head coach and be like, "Hey, head coach, like, something needs to be done about this."
Or if bad things happen, who's on the chopping block?
The head coach. Yes. And so that's first of all, like, how I see the role of the head coach.
Okay.
And having it all as the head coach, that's the responsibility that you want. And then I thought about, like, being a mother and, like, being, like, a parent in general. That requires you, like, to be, like, present in your child's life. And that's what, in my opinion, that's what I would think of being, like, a good parent, or a parent that has it all. Like, it's somebody that's there. They're there for, they may not be there for all of the, like, events,
every single thing ever,
but they are very present in their kid's life, and their kid feels like, my parent is here for me.
And my parent loves me. Like,
yeah. And my parent is present. And, like, I would say, when I read the tweet, like, I just started thinking, like, it's really hard to be a head coach or any type of coach in, like, a collegiate world, especially some of the time demands for like coaching and stuff, and then also be like that family person that is there and highly present. I feel like the two are very much at competing ends. And then like I started to think like, well, I have some friends that are like working in like the business world, working as lawyers, and there's no way that like you can be the like person in your office, say you're a lawyer, that has the most billable hours, and then also be the person that is there for your like
kids,
present for your kids.
Because part of being that most billable hours person is being there until, you know,
yeah,
9,
you
10,
get the
whatever.
You got to be billing hours.
Right. Or like something comes up and you have to go in, right? Like that's not very possible especially if you're a single parent and you don't have childcare, but even as a dual parent relationship,
yes.
If the other person is at work and you're supposed to take care of the kids, like at a certain age, that might be fine, but you can't just be like, bye, 3-year-old, don't die, or like, bye, infant, gotta go to work, and you certainly won't be billing many hours if you're taking those infants' children with you just because they require so much attention.
Yes. And then like also just like thinking about being on a college campus, or like there are so many like time demands for like just where like you're having extra meetings, or say like there is a basketball game, a college sports team's basketball game, where like there are people on the facilities teams that have to like be there to set up, and they have to be there like a couple hours before, and then typically like a couple hours after the game. And say the game starts at 9, the game doesn't end until 11, and so you're there until like 12.
So you're probably
12:30.
there at 7.
Yeah, so you're there at the very latest. You're there by 7 p.m. and you don't leave until 12:30 a.m. So like, there are a lot of kid activities that happen in the afternoon after school that like you're probably not there for. And yes, there is an off season, but I just, in my opinion, and looking at the article, like it is very hard to have it all, and you kind of have to make sacrifices on what it is that like you want in your life and what makes you happy, because we're all in the pursuit of happiness.
Yes, I think that's really wise. I think that's a good observation, and I personally think that the whole "you can have it all" is just like a lie that they feed you. Like, I'm very cynical about this. I have zero belief. Like, I do believe that when you define what having it all means to you, you can have that. Mm-hmm. But I would say that strictly that cannot mean I have a family that I'm present with and I make a lot of money. Like, I work a ton. I make a lot of money. I go on lots of vacations. I do all these things. I have nice things. Like, my kids are amazing. Like, they love me. We have a great relationship. Like, at some point, there's only 24 hours in a day.
Yes.
And so maybe you decide you do want to have a high-profile career and you do want to have a relationship with your children. And so maybe you have to work unorthodox hours to make that happen. Maybe you go in from 4 a.m. until 3 p.m. and then you also go in again from, like, you do work at home from 8 to 11. Or something, like if you really want to have working a lot, but still have time to be with your family. But that means maybe you aren't going to all the practices. Maybe you have to hire someone to do the groceries or do these other things, because if you're working that much and then the times that you're not working, spending with your family, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's
like,
still like, if somebody
I just made up some example off the top of my head. I don't know if that's feasible.
That
but
is
my
not
point
like
is,
even a sleep, like from a sleep
perspective. Well,
like,
right, and so that's another
even
thing. So a lot of people, like, I don't want to be crude, but how many people do you know that are in, like, high-pressure, demanding jobs that are fit and healthy? Like, the obesity epidemic is real, and it is in a lot of places, but I think, like, for instance, I know a lot of people that their jobs are too demanding, but they have other I don't know how to put it, other things that demand their attention, and so they just don't have time to exercise, right? And so it's not like, oh my God, they're morbidly obese, but even they will say, oh, my health has fallen by the wayside. I'm not doing the things I wish I would and would like to do because that just falls 10th on my priority list. And 10th is on hour 28 of the day, which doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, like, I just, or...
Something's
got to give. And so if you define what is important to you, what are my these can't gives, and then everything else you're just like, it's fine, I have the ones that are really important, but then in that sense, I feel like you can have it your way, not like have it all. I don't know, like, because to me, I just...
Go on the subway tomorrow.
Yeah, I just don't think it's feasible, like we've said, the number of time, like, I mean, just pure time constraints and everything that you need.
And it's funny that, like, I often, like, I found myself thinking, like, women, it seems that, like, in asking this question, can you have it all? Women are the ones that seem to have to be, like,
doing it all.
Like, striving to have it all, right?
Right, because
like,
men are not expected, traditionally, to spend as much time giving childcare as women.
So that's not part of it all for men.
Right, because, and I feel
providing, like, being the breadwinner and providing.
Yes, I feel like, so for instance, I don't want to say any names just to protect people's privacy, but we have a friend who you recently he was speaking and you heard him, and he was talking about, like, oh, I put my wife first, like, I have it all, like, all this stuff. And it was a great message, and when we talked about it, we were like, that doesn't sound like having it all to us, because our priority system is different from his, right? Because we know this individual, we know them, and it just feels like their priorities are different from our personal priorities. And so it was interesting that he felt that he had it all, when if that was our life, I would not feel like we had it all. And I don't think that you would feel like you had it all if you lived your life the same way that he lives his.
Yeah, and I think that, like, just in terms of males having it all, like, first of all, the question is never brought up. Like, males it's always the automatic assumption the guy has it all. Like, the guy... Like, or
that, like, when you're asking, can you have it all, you're specifically asking the female audience.
Yes.
It's not assumed, like, whether a guy has it all or doesn't. It's never even a question to him because
it's of course
not an issue. Right.
And, like, it's funny that you bring up, like, the child rearing and, like, males having to, like, have an active role in, like, their, like, the parental, like, right, or not the parental rights, but the parental responsibility. Mm-hmm. And if you think about having it all, as specific to that, like, article about the head coach, female head coach, and she has a baby. She's pregnant right now. And a lot of times, it's been my experience in, like, coaching and professions, like, the women are the ones that have to sacrifice the, like, career aspirations in order for their male, like, partners to have it all and to go out and be successful and to be, like, and to reach the height of their professional careers. So a lot of times having it all for, like, a guy or a male is just reaching the top of my professional career. And I think as a society, and especially, like, for myself.
Well, right. No, I would. So I agree with what I think, but I want to elaborate on your statement. You said having it all for a guy is reaching the top of their career. I disagree. I think it's having a wife and a family and reaching the top of their professional career, but not having to necessarily do as much time with the child and family as maybe other people do, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe, like you mentioned, the wife has sacrificed her professional career so that she can provide the childcare. Or if she doesn't, they have a nanny, right? Or they have an au pair, or there's someone else there, because otherwise you can't have that family if there's no one there to raise them. But kind of in having it all is that the male doesn't, this is, now we're segueing into my opinion, is that the male doesn't have to worry about it, like it's just taken care of. Doesn't have to cross his mind who's making dinner, doesn't have to cross his mind, do we have food in the fridge? Like, someone else is doing all that. All that mental planning and thinking, and not just the mental planning and thinking, the actual doing.
Yes.
Chores take forever. Laundry takes forever, especially when it's not just you. Cleaning takes forever, right? Getting people to the bus on time. There's all these things, that take a long time, take a lot of forethought, right? And so I think a lot of men have the privilege of not having to even worry or be burdened by any of those thoughts or concerns because they just assume that someone else is taking care of it. And this is really interesting. I wish we could have had my parents on this podcast. So the reason is...
we can always have
we can always come on, and talk about this. So my parents are divorced, and while they were married and for a long time after they were divorced, we had an au pair to help with the nannying because both my mom and my dad, I would say, had high-profile careers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know if you asked my dad, he would agree with that. I know if you asked my mom, she definitely felt that she had a career. I don't know if she would categorize it as, like, her highest potential, or if she felt like she maybe had to sacrifice a little bit. Mm-hmm. I have no idea. From what it looks like to me, I would say she had pretty close to her potential. Like, she wasn't too hindered in her professional development, but I could be wrong. Yeah. But she has told me that she feels guilty about that. Like, she's told me multiple times that she felt guilty that she wasn't spending as much time with us kids, right? And that other people would say things to her and, like, society and and I'm like, I feel like I had plenty of time with my mom. Like, you're talking about kids that feel like they have parents that spend time with them and know that they love them. Like, every day I knew my mom loved me. I felt like my mom spent a ton of time with me, and I feel like my mom spent a ton of time with all my siblings, right? But still she felt guilty that she had a career. And she says that with each one of us, she tried to be a stay-at-home mom. And after, 8 months to a year, she was pulling her hair out like, I need to challenge my intellectual side of my brain. Like, I can't, like, this is killing me with just...
being here around
Yes. And so then she would inevitably go back to work, and thus the au pairs and live-in nanny, things like that. So, and again, I think that's part of my mom, right? Like, she's gone back and forth now, like, I could just retire, and then she'll be in between jobs, or she did retire for a little bit, and she's like, oh, no, I need to keep myself occupied, I have bills to pay that I want, I have all these goals that require funding, so I think she's very much the type of person that likes to have goals and work on them, but, so going back to that point, then there was a period of time, my parents were divorced, and my dad was essentially raising us kids on his own while we were in high school. So he had a girlfriend, but she lived in another state. So when we were at Dad's house, it was us 3 kids and my dad. And so he was effectively a single parent for half of the time. And I know that for a large part of that time, he still had the high-profile job. But he was still up in the morning, going around waking everybody up, and me, who needed, 80 million times to wake up, and making us breakfast, getting all our lunches ready, getting us out, And so it would just be very interesting, because I feel like he was a rare...
breed?
A rare male that had primary childcare responsibilities, but also had the high-profile career, right? And this is why it was such a big deal for him, making sure we had carpools places and, all this stuff, because he physically couldn't do it.
So I would like to push back on that, he was probably... I think there are a lot of males that have, primary, that have primary care of their kids. We just don't hear about it as much. I do think, it may not be the majority, but I do think that there are a number of males that, are involved and, have a lot of parental, responsibilities, even if they're not still together with their...
No, and I agree with that, but usually, I would say in that case, very rare are they, a single parent. Right? I feel like there's hundreds, there's tons, a high proportion of men that are very involved. Like my stepdad, very involved in the family, lots of caregiving time and responsibility, but he had a partner to help, as opposed to my dad. Like, granted, it was only 2 weeks out of every month. That's different than 100% of the time. But when we were at my dad's house, it wasn't like, honey, I need to run to the store. I need you to watch the kids. Like, there was no one. Mm-hmm. And granted, we were mostly in high school and middle school, so he could do things like that without it being a big issue. But there was also a period of time, like, before he met his girlfriend, when we were small. Like, 5 through 10. Where he couldn't do that. So,
like, I think I just want to push back on the idea that we are just a society that doesn't have any single male.
And I agree. I think that's very important to acknowledge. Yeah. But I would also like to acknowledge that whether or not that is true, which I think it is, the traditional belief in society is still that the primary caregiving responsibility should be the female. Yes. Which I think is a detriment to the mothers and the children.
Yeah,
and I think the fathers.
And it becomes exponentially harder to have it all if you're a single
parent. Yes, I agree. So, and you single parents out there, you keep on rocking it, because
yeah, I don't know how y'all do it.
We're mad respect.
Don't know how you do it, because having it all for you guys is 3 times as harder.
Yeah. Maybe more than that. But yeah, so I think we're in consensus that it's impossible to have it all. But going back to your point about the coaching, just kind of highlighting how our society thinks about that is similarly a gymnastics coach recently, female head coach of a very top 10 collegiate gymnastics program, recently had a baby in December, and season starts in January. And there was an announcement at their first home meet, oh my gosh, this coach, she's head coach, the team is doing great. Oh, and she has a family, and look, here's a picture of them and their new baby. I feel like never once would a male head coach, if a new child was born into their family, at the first football game, it's oh look, this coach is an amazing coach, and he has a family. Wow. What an achievement! It's
but I do think that
I'm not
they would highlight
it might be welcome to the family, new baby so and so, but it wouldn't be oh my god, this is amazing! Who would ever have thought a woman can have a family and do something else besides have a family? It just, the whole, and maybe it was the tone of how this whole thing was set up, but to me it came across very much as oh my gosh, we're shocked and appalled. A woman can do something besides have a family. And I'm it's 2019.
Well, I will say that, in 2019, we have become more aware of, the difficulties of, childbearing. And so, with those difficulties, we understand, she just had a baby in December. And,
but see, that's not, I don't think that's what they were highlighting. I think that's a totally different issue. I think it's amazing. If you just had a baby and you're back to work the next week, lots of doctors do that. Our friend had a very similar situation, and that is a physical feat, I would say.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I think that is very different and something amazing, but I don't think that was at all the tone or the implication of this. And maybe it's the personal chip on my shoulder that this is rubbing me the wrong way, but yeah, I was just oh my god, eye roll. They would never do this if it was a male coach. And again, I think it's because the traditional expectation is wow, she's having this job and doing all the childcare stuff, which just can't be true that she's doing all of it, right? Mm-hmm. But when it's a male, it's already assumed that he's not doing the overwhelming majority.
Yeah, and it's funny, there was I don't know how much this segues, but I'm going to bring it up anyway.
Go for it. It's your podcast.
Whatever. There was a guy there was a recently an collegiate all-star game, and there was a kid that he had his fiance was having their first child.
So one of the players, a collegiate athlete.
A collegiate or former. He's not in college anymore. He's done with college.
But he's recently
out
of
an
college?
all-star game. Yeah, he's recently out of college. He's preparing to go to the NFL, and his fiance had a baby, and like he didn't feel like he wanted to be there, but he didn't feel like he felt like him being at this All-Star game where like it was going to be an opportunity for him to showcase for like the people who are going to be recruiting him for.
It was too important of a professional event for him to miss, especially at this point in his career.
Yes, and he thought that he was going to be like him doing that and staying at the professional event was going to help him like be able to provide for his family, as opposed to like the emotional support that he could have for like his wife or his fiance while like she's having their firstborn.
Right.
And so it's kind of interesting. Like it goes back to like what is having it all? Like how do you define having it all?
Right. And I think that's kind of where I was going with our friend that we were talking about. Because I think if both people in that relationship are fine with that and want that, I think that's wonderful.
Yes,
do you know what I mean? If both of them agree, I want you to be the breadwinner, I want to raise the children, and maybe that means you, like the sacrifice we're making is now I don't have a professional career, and now you don't get nearly as much time and emotional bonding with me and the children. Because it's not just the children.
Yeah. It's
also time spent with her. Like, he's gone, right? And she's making that sacrifice, too. Like, a lot of these hard things I'm going to have to do alone, right? But if that's what makes them happy, which a lot of people, I think, it is.
Yeah, and I think traditionally that has kind of been, like, the blueprint of what, like, having it all is.
Right.
And it's kind of, like, in 2019, we're kind of leaving that traditional blueprint in the rearview mirror and saying, like, opening up to, like, the different possibilities.
Right. It's not it's not a have it all, it's a have it your way.
Yes. So, yeah, I think I think you kind of hit it on the nail on the head in that, like, the communication aspect of it in a relationship. And that, like, especially for people that, like, where kids are involved and, like, it's a partnership of, like, you're planning to be with that person for a long time. Like, it's important to talk about, like, well, is it what's important for us to have? What are some of the sacrifices we're going to make? What is our having it all structure look like?
Yeah, and I think it's important that both partners are like, okay, here are my, like, top 2 non-negotiables, right? And then here are my, maybe, in addition to those 2 things, here are my 3, like, really, really want, it would be great if we could have this. And here's my list of, like, I could give that up, right? And I think it's really important for each person to know themselves and to be able to come up with that list for themselves, but also that the 2, like you said, communicate about that.
Yes.
Because I do feel like just for instance, if my top 2 non-negotiables are both things on your I could do without list, that might not make for a really successful, do you know what I mean? Like, any compromise there is going to be dissatisfying, right? So even if you're to one of the partners, right? And so I feel like as long as the non-negotiables, both people can find a way that whatever compromise they come up with is satisfying in that. Like, you have to have enough similarity that you can make a satisfying compromise, I think. And so I think it's important that people are open and communicative about, here's what is important to me, here's what I am willing to sacrifice. Because if it's something I'm not willing to sacrifice, but you need me to, like, but it's, like, my absolute non-negotiable, then that's, like...
But, like, if it's your absolute non-negotiable, like, is it part of being in the partnership is that, like, I understand that and, like, I respect that?
Yes, but so that's why I'm saying, like, I think people need to have these conversations before they get to, like, oh, now we have a baby, right? Do you know what I mean? Like...
I guess in an ideal world, like, I don't think people work like that, but, like, maybe they do.
Well, I think in a lot of relationships, like, when people are considering getting married, I think that would be a great opportunity to have those conversations. As opposed to getting married and finding out 8 months later, like,
Have you seen the divorce rate in America?
Well, I know this is my point. Like maybe if people did this, it would help. Like they could just break up before they got married.
Continue.
That's all. I mean, I feel like if you ask any successful two people that have been married for a long time, they will tell you that like it's all about compromise, right? And you know, at some point, if two people are just too different, right? Because if people are too different, any compromise is not going to, like I said, it's not going to be satisfying. Like maybe in the short term, it's like, sure, I'm giving up on one of my non-negotiables and I can deal with that for now. But in the long term, if it's truly your non-negotiable, that will be a deal breaker eventually. One way or another.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand, like, if two people are on opposite ends of the spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they agree
I'm not saying everything. It's like only on the top two non-negotiables.
So the top... I'm not fully understanding the whole, like, we're on opposite ends of the top two, like, non-negotiables, and we can't meet somewhere in the middle.
So I'll give you an example. For instance, many people's non-negotiable is like, I want to have children, right? And someone else's non-negotiable is like, I absolutely will not have children. Any compromise there is one person winning and the other person losing. And even if that means that other person gets their other non-negotiable, at some point, it's not going to be truly satisfying to them. Right? Like, because I would say for me, you know, at the very beginning of the episode, I listed off, like, oh, you know, having a family, having a close relationship, like, good health, a great career, travel all the time, do all these things, have all these nice things, have a deeply fulfilling relationship, right? I feel like if one of my non-negotiables is having children, but a partner can provide to me every single other one. You know, I have no financial worries, I'm traveling all the time, I have a great high-profile career, I have a deeply fulfilling relationship. Some part of me is going to be like, well, my non-negotiable was having a baby, and if I don't have that, all these other things, while amazing, are just Band-Aids. Like, it's not truly satisfying. Right? Other people, having a baby isn't their non-negotiable. It's one of their would-like-to-haves, right? And in that relationship, that scenario is deeply fulfilling because it wasn't their non-negotiable. Does that make sense?
I get where you're coming from. And I do see, like, two people, like, one, like, wanting to have a baby, the other one not wanting to have a baby, like, or have a family. Like, I can understand, like, my question would be, why are the two of you people together?
That's all I've been saying, though. It's like that.
But, like, I don't see, like, I guess I don't see a lot of those type of examples. Like, having a family might be the only one that is,
okay.
Where, like, two people could be, like, this is breaking. Like, this is deal or no deal.
From my personal experience and from many of the things groups of my friends have said, as we're all in our mid to late 20s and have gone through multiple serious relationships, right? There's always this period of like, well, we think we're compatible, we're going to really try to make it work, and then in the end it's like, ultimately we weren't because our non-negotiables were not, right? And so I feel like oftentimes it's not through a conversation, it's through like trying to make it work when truly you're giving up on your non-negotiable and you finally can't handle it anymore.
Gotcha.
So, I think we got off topic a little bit. But.
Yeah. Good luck trying to have it all, folks. Shit ain't easy. Just keeping it 100.
And we're really proud of all the single parents out there.
True. Guys are rock stars. Alright. I think that's about right.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing.
Warren G. Want it all.
You gonna turn it off?
Yeah.